All right, welcome in to another episode. We are live with Miss Arianna Reardon. Ari, how are we doing?
I am good. I'm so excited to be here.
Thanks for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. I was so stoked when you actually reached out to me. Actually reached out to Nick, and you're like, Ariana's not answering my DM.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because I don't know how much time went by. It was a few days or something. I'm like, Ari's probably not going to see this.
I meant to tell you this ahead of time. I don't go by Ari anymore. It's Arianna.
Really?
Yeah.
Since when?
So, well, you know what's funny? When I was younger, my family always called me Arianna. No one ever gave me a nickname. And when I got into middle school, people started saying Ari, and I was like, I just kind of rolled with it.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I was like, wait, I really like my name. I don't like Ari.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'm just going to tell everyone.
I can't even imagine going by my full name, like Joshua.
I know.
I can't even imagine that. Or like Nicholas. That's also a pretty stupid name. But anyway.
I call him that when I'm looking. I'll be like, Nicholas.
Anyway, back on track here. So why don't you just kind of go into detail, how we know each other, your background, how we got to this point. You have the floor. Take it away.
Okay, so obviously I vaguely knew who you were in high school. I obviously knew we went to the smallest school, so it wasn't hard.
Right.
I think we might have been on the same bus. I don't remember though. Because you lived in Sean Kennedy's neighborhood, right?
No, I lived
You didn't?
a few streets down. Yeah, I did not live in that neighborhood. I lived kind of by the truck stop near Dan's place.
Oh, maybe I would. One time I got him confused with you. That was
Everyone did that. I don't even understand how that's possible.
I don't either. Looking back now, it's not.
It's
possible.
crazy, red hair, I guess the height, but yeah.
I think that might have been it.
Yeah.
I feel like people who drink well water are really short, so there are a lot of short kids in that school. That's
Wow.
my theory on it.
Really?
I could be wrong.
I was not expecting to hear that.
But
That's really interesting.
But regardless, doesn't matter. So yeah, we went to the same high school. You were a year younger than me.
Right.
And I knew vaguely who you were. I don't think I ever interacted with you.
I don't think so. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't think so. You were a cheerleader, right? So maybe
yes.
for basketball games or something, but never casual conversation. I don't think. No.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I did cheerleading, so I did it up until my junior year. My sophomore year, I did not do basketball season.
Right.
Because I was doing all-stars. And then junior year, I just kind of got over it. It was just too much drama and stress, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Sounds like high school.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, I don't really regret anything in my life at all, but when I was younger, I started dance when I was 3.
Right.
So I was a dancer my whole life, and then I started cheerleading when I was 10, turning 11. I was going into 6th grade, and that was just for Pop Warner, whatever.
Right.
And I enjoyed it, and then I went back to dance, and my cheerleading had helped me with my dance, and they actually asked me to be on the competition team. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do dance, I'm going to go on the competition team. And I went back to cheerleading just to do the season for Pop Warner because I wanted to, and they're like, well, she can't do the competition, she'll only do the football games. And my coaches were like, we designed our whole competition and halftime routine around you. We knew that you were going to be here. I swear to God. Yeah.
That's
and then
ironic.
I was like, it's a super big honor. And I was like, well, now I didn't want to go back.
Right, yeah.
But in hindsight, my parents didn't push me. In hindsight, I wish they did push me to do dance instead.
Yeah.
Because I think that would have been much more productive for me than cheerleading.
I feel like that's tough to look at though, because if you I do that all the time. I think back, I'm I wish I did something different. But then if I did that, I could easily be saying, I wish I did the thing I did.
That's
true,
exactly.
That's just kind of how I look at it. I try not to look too much into hindsight.
No, I agree, because hindsight's always 20/22.
Right.
It's just funny because the cheerleading made me think of it, because I don't really talk about cheerleading that much.
Right.
I don't know why. I feel like it's funny when I actually look at life. I feel like there's all these different chapters we all have.
Yeah.
Phases. The high school chapter, just drama, nonsense, doesn't even matter.
Right.
And then obviously when you get out, you think you know everything, and then you actually learn. You're like, oh my God, I don't know. I don't know anything at all.
At every age, I feel like that. I'm when I was 20, I'm I'm a genius. And then now I look back and I'm what was I thinking? I knew nothing.
I feel like I still don't know a lot.
Yeah, now I kind of feel like that. But I also feel like I know a lot more than some others, I guess, as arrogant as that may sound.
No, that doesn't sound arrogant at all, I don't think.
But I feel like I'm going to look back when I'm 30, I'm going to be like, that 25-year-old kid knew nothing.
Yeah.
That's how I feel like I'm going to look at myself in 5 years.
But it's funny that you say that, because I also feel like if you don't look at things like that, anything in life, then how are you evolving and growing?
Yeah, that's true as well.
I feel like no matter who you are, how old you are, or what point you're at in your life, you should be learning
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, and I think that's what holds a lot of people back is they get content, and that leads to a lot of complacency. And then once you get complacent, sometimes you don't even realize it, which is really the scary thing.
Yeah.
And if you don't realize it, then you might not realize it until it's too late, I guess. Or, you know,
No, you're right. It's easy to fall into complacency without even being aware of it.
right.
It's just, I remember Nick and I had been discussing this just with his career because I had gone through some stuff, which I can get into, related to my injuries in wrestling and then my blog and all of that. But I remember telling him, like, I would see him actually struggling with getting down trading, day trading, and the gym because the gym was always his career.
Right.
And I noticed a pattern, like whenever he was upset or his stocks didn't go well or whatever, the day trading wasn't working out, he'd just leave and go to the gym.
Right.
And I was like, that's like your comfort zone.
Yeah, he falls back into it.
Exactly.
Right.
That's like your default because that's what you know. And it's like, but when you're stuck in that, I guess that way of living and thinking, and even when you're not aware of it, that's when it can become dangerous.
Yeah, once it just becomes like second nature, it's really hard. And I think it's like really powerful when someone can like really break out of that, realize it, and then move on to something else.
Totally.
Yeah.
I agree 1000%.
But anyway, what are you up to now? What are you doing these days?
So I am running my blog, Flawless World. That is my passion. I am so happy doing it. It really, I'm excited to get to it when I wake up in the morning.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
It's on my mind 24/7, which I try to balance out because if you like, I feel like you need to shut your brain off sometimes.
Yeah.
And because I like being present. I'm trying to be very mindful. I meditate every day. I journal every day. I have a book that's called The Book of Awakening by Mark. I think it's Nepo. It's either Nepo or Nepo. I don't want to say it wrong, but I believe that's
one
what
of
it
the
is.
two.
Yeah. And I have that every day. It's like just a mindfulness book that gives you daily readings and just different ways of looking at life. So I do all of that, and I really work on just living totally present and just mindful in the present moment. And if I'm consumed by my blog and just thinking of ideas, because it's easy to get stuck and be like, oh, like I remember one time I was meditating and like an idea came to me. And meditation's a great time for creativity to come to you because you're in a higher consciousness.
Right.
But I remember like I was thinking about like writing down, like journaling, and I'm like, oh, maybe I can integrate this into like a blog post. And I was like, okay, I'm not being present. Or like we'd be sitting outside, Nick and I would be sitting outside just hanging out and chatting, and my mind would be like drifting off
Right.
onto just topics and whatnot.
I feel like I do that all the time too.
Yeah, it's so easy to.
Yeah.
I think we all do it, and especially with the way we like technology is and social media, everything is so fast paced. I feel like our brains are just automatically 5 steps ahead of where we are.
Absolutely.
Physically.
Like I remember when I first looked into meditating, because I'm not gonna like, I always thought it was really kind of bogus to be honest. But I'm like, all right, let me at least like look into it here and see if there's
Yeah.
something there.
Right.
And I looked into it, and the guy really made this skit. He made this point about how he's kind of like, sometimes like when you're in the shower in the morning before you go to work, how often are you actually in the shower? You're like already in traffic, you're already at your desk answering emails. Before you know it, you're already stressed out and you're just in the
Yeah.
shower. So it's like, I think
Yeah.
that really put a lot into perspective for me because I do that too. And I'm like, it really made me think like, all right, maybe there's something here. Maybe I can just use that to kind of begin to pull myself back to the present moment more often and kind of like focus on what's in front of me as opposed to things that are going to be happening, you know, in a few hours or a few weeks or a few months even.
Yes, totally. That's
Yeah.
so true. Someone actually told me one time they try to do this thing, it's called 4 transitional breaths. And they said before they go on and do anything, like, for example, like what you just said, like before they get in the shower, they try to take 4 deep breaths. And that like really is supposed to just help ground you and bring you back to the present. I've tried to do that, but it's easier said than done. I think when you're not in the habit of doing it.
Probably,
Because I'll be
yeah.
in the middle. And then they were like, well, if you're in the middle of something and you think of it, you can just do the breaths then. So I'm like, okay, when I remember to do it, I will. But that's everything that you just said is so spot on. It's just all about being mindful and being present.
Right.
And that's when you really, I feel like that's when everyone's their happiest.
Yeah.
And that just is, and that's also when too, other things can enter your life. Like that's when my creativity is the highest.
Yeah.
Is when I'm most present.
Right.
Because I try to always write 3 blog posts a week. However, I do a lot of stuff to try and prevent burnout, but things will pop up. Like my neck injury will pop up.
Right.
And that's something sometimes that will take a lot out of me. So I'll be like, okay, I have to take a step back. And doing so and just surrendering and relinquishing control and just letting things come to me instead of trying to force them is when I'm at my most creative and my most happiest.
I think I was talking about this on a podcast I recorded a couple days ago, and we made a great point that like sometimes you just can't force creativity, like you said.
Yeah.
And we talked about how like sometimes like we'll be in like such a rut and it just seems like, all right, there's literally nothing that's coming up here, like absolutely nothing. Like, there's no ideas, like no blood flowing, nothing.
Right.
Then all of a sudden you like walk away for 30 minutes and you do anything else at all. And all of a sudden you have like a lineup of like different things, like 10 ideas. Like, and I go through these things all the time. I'll be like, I literally have no one to come on this podcast. Like literally not a guest in mind. I'm like, I'm going to have to do like a solo one next week. And then literally the next day I'll have 4 people lined up. It's like actually crazy how like, I guess if you really try to separate yourself a little bit and not force creativity, how creative you're going to get.
Yes.
At least that's how I feel.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I actually learned too that I guess creativity for everyone in general, it vibrates at a higher frequency. Mm-hmm. So it takes a lot more out of you than most people even realize.
Right.
And I will feel it too because like if I have a post that I've taken a lot of photos for and that I have to go in and Lightroom and just tweak the lighting or edit whatever I need to, just typical social media blog type stuff.
Right.
I'll have like hundreds of photos that I have to go through and then I put like the post together and then I'll make collages and like that will just take up so much of my time and like I'll be working till like 7-8 p.m. I'll start at like 9 and I'll notice the next day I'm like drained.
Yeah.
I feel like I got run over by a train.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so true. Everything, you have to just take a step back, especially when you're doing anything creative. But I think that's true for most people in general. I think giving yourself breaks is necessary.
Right. Absolutely.
Especially, that's what I've learned in my experience.
Right.
I try to formulate like a normal work day because I know, especially like I'll push myself too hard one day and then I'll just be out for the following day.
Yeah. That's what Nick and I talked about the last time he was on. Like at a certain point, you can't have that, I guess, Gary Vee mindset where it's like grind, like every second you're breathing.
Yeah.
Like you really have to say, okay, like I want to keep going, but I need to like leave myself wanting more essentially and just kind of move on.
Right.
And like just say that's enough for today and just pick it up tomorrow.
Exactly. I don't know why people say that. They're like, oh, I have 24 hours of the day and I spend them all awake thinking and working. And I'm like, okay, so you don't sleep ever, you're going to die. Like,
oh my God.
How long can you really go without sleeping?
Not
that long, right? Like, what is it, a week?
I'm not sure. It's something crazy. But I read a book on like why we sleep, and it like changed my whole thought process on sleep. Like, I mean, like everything changed because I was never someone where it's like, all right, like I'm not gonna sleep, I'm gonna stay up all night. But I'm like, 5 or 6 hours, I'm fine. After reading this book, it literally changed my entire life. Like it's crazy. Yeah.
I bet, because I notice even the days that I get like 8 hours of sleep, I'm like, I feel like $1 million.
Actually, it's like really ironic because like everyone thinks they can function on less than 7 hours of sleep, but there's actually like 1% of people that actually have that trait, like on the whole planet. So chances are you're not that person,
right?
Like whoever you are. But the really crazy thing is, like when you sleep, like say you sleep 6 hours instead of 7 hours, your rate of exertion drops by up to 30%. So,
really?
Yeah. So say like you go out and run 10 miles on 7 hours of sleep. That's like your best run. That's what you can do. Then next week you come back and you sleep 6 hours. You might be completely gassed and on the ground, like hyperventilating after 7 miles.
Really?
Like just like that. It really has that effect. It's crazy. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Like, I think everyone should read this book, and it's like 10 out of 10.
That's very interesting. I would have never guessed that. I mean, it makes sense, actually, when you like think about it. But I would have never, ever thought that.
Yeah, it's insane.
That's wild.
But let's kind of get into your blog a little bit here. That's
cool.
what I'm kind of like actually really excited to talk about. So
I am too.
Take me back to the beginning here. So what was the initial goal with the blog?
So when I started the blog, my initial goal, I'll back up and just give a slight backstory.
Okay.
So my dream was to be a professional wrestler.
Right.
And I was training for that, and I was actually starting to get booked at shows. My first wrestling match debut was actually at a sold-out baseball stadium in Ohio, which was really cool. That's awesome. Yeah, it was a really cool experience. Wow, not too many people
can say that. That's for sure.
Yeah, Nick has always laid it out like that. He's like, do you realize what you actually did? And I was like, no, I guess not, because I never thought like...
Nah, fam.
Yeah, I just didn't think it was like that big of a deal, or like
right.
I guess I didn't give myself enough credit. Mm-hmm. And I was traveling around all of like New England, New York, I'd go to, and Connecticut, Massachusetts. I was starting to travel every weekend, and then this was all in 2017. And then August 5th, I was heading to work one night, and I was like 2 minutes from my house. I was living with my parents at the time, and I stopped at a stop sign, and in my head, I'm looking back and forth, and I'm like, okay, I can go because there's no cars. And then all of a sudden, I hear this like loud crunching noise, and just like brakes squealing, and just like this awful like crunching sound, and I feel my head like whip like back and forth, like, and it hit like the headrest, and it happened so quickly in my head. I was like, did I just hit the gas or something? And like, I thought something might have happened with my car.
Right.
And then I look out in my rearview mirror and I see a car like this, like just right on top of me. It was a truck. So the guy was drinking, and I'm guessing he didn't see the stop sign. He actually took off from the accident and then called it in from his house. He was slurring because he told me he was going to pull over, and as I called the police, he took off. So, and there was actually an independent witness who corroborated it. And he, called it in from his house and said, oh, I didn't want to, stay there because of the traffic. But it was mainly...
Because of the traffic.
Yeah, it was mainly because he didn't want to get breathalyzed.
Yeah.
And they couldn't legally breathalyze him on the property.
Right.
So that was, whatever. That's not important now. But that was what happened, and then it led to... I had a shoulder injury and a neck injury, and then my back was a little messed up too. I was in physical therapy for all of that, and I had shoulder surgery in 2018. And while this is all going on, I was very determined to get better and to get back to wrestling. That was all I was focused on, just rehabbing everything. And as the shoulder started getting better and progressing, my neck continually got worse. And it was like, okay, something's not right here. My doctor just kept blowing me off. I brought Nick in with me to appointments. This was before COVID, clearly.
Right, yeah.
With Nick, I'd bring him with me. I'd bring my mom with me. I even brought my dad just so I'd have other people to corroborate my story.
Right.
Tell the doctor, like, okay, I'm not making this up. Like, something's wrong with me. And he was like, oh, I think it's just your shoulder. I think it's going to get better. And then, like, he's like, you still have muscle spasms from the whiplash. And we'd be like... Okay, but like it's been like over a year at this point.
Right.
And like I said, I was still determined. I wanted to get better, focused on getting better, and I was still keeping myself busy. I was working on a novel because I've always been very creative and I've always loved writing.
Right.
And the reason I fell in love with wrestling in the first place was because of that creativity aspect. And mixed with the athleticism, of course, but it was really the creativity. So I really wanted to continue exercising my creativity. I wrote the novel, I finished early 2019, and I was reading an article one day on my phone. I think it was just about like makeup or something. And I don't know, or maybe it was like it might have been an interview with Travis Scott, but something like a light bulb went off in my head, and it was like, why don't you start a blog? And I actually had wanted to start a blog back in 2015 before I did when I was going to do a bikini show.
Right. And
Nick ended up putting up something on his YouTube channel, and it was like, should she do a blog or YouTube channel? And blog won. So, not blog one, I'm sorry. YouTube channel won. And I was like, okay, whatever. But I'd always wanted to do a blog.
Right.
Because I always loved magazines growing up, and even now, and even like online magazines. I just always have loved them.
Right.
So it was like a light bulb finally went off, and I was like, why am I not doing this? So that was what led me to do it. But when I first started, it was cool. I came up with the name Flawless World because when I was wrestling, my name was Arianna Diamond, and my tagline was flawless. I'm flawless. Everything about me is flawless, type of thing. So it was like a play off my wrestling name. And I came up with the Flawless World. And then it was just a way for me to exercise my creativity and kind of keep myself in the spotlight because I amassed a small following while I was wrestling.
Right.
So I kind of wanted to keep those people interested in me because at this point, too, I think there was a part of me that still wanted and hoped that I was going to get back to wrestling.
Right.
So I didn't want to lose all that momentum. So that was what led me to it. And I knew it was something that I wanted to do every single day. Hence, I started like the schedule I did every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I was doing new posts. And I knew that I wanted to make it like my thing, but I didn't have like a full business plan, if that makes sense.
Right. You were just kind of going with the flow and seeing what happened.
Exactly.
Right.
And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to see what happens. I can do my writing. I'll get creative. I can keep myself in the spotlight somehow, which sounds really narcissistic, but That was what was going on.
Right.
And it'll be good. So that was I decided to launch it on my 24th birthday in September 2019, September 1st. So that was really cool. It was a really special day. And it's cool now because I get to celebrate my birthday and the launch of my blog on the same day. Yeah. So I'm really glad that I did that. And I had been planning for it, and I just could not come up with like the right date. And I was like, I think I'm going to do my birthday. And then it hit me. But yeah, I didn't really know. I didn't have an idea
right.
of what I wanted to do at first. I knew that I just was going to go with the flow.
Right.
More than anything.
I feel like those sometimes are the most successful ideas, though, when you're just kind of like, all right, like, I want to do this. I want to kind of express the knowledge I have. I want to help people in any way I can. And I think those kind of ideas kind of take off before you even know it. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like a lot of times you look back at these, like, big guys, like that have these big followings, like they started something, but they didn't necessarily have everything they had now. And they kind of just said, I'm just going to do this and see what happens. Like, I think, and I know I talk about him every so often, I think Max Tuning is a pretty good example of this, because I can't imagine when he started a YouTube channel, he was going to say, I'm going to sell 5 million bags of sour candy. You know what I mean? Like, he grew into that over time. But that's what I'm trying to get at. And I think it just takes, like, time. But anyway, how has, since you've gone from the very beginning of just trying to be a little creative, just, like, expressing who you are, how has that goal changed, and what is your goal now?
So I would say the first year was, I mean, I'm still learning, but the first year was a major learning curve.
Right.
Just kind of tuning into what posts did the best. And, you know, I have insights too, which is really helpful because it gives me access to what people like, and I'm able to see what people respond best to. It's like looking at views on a YouTube channel.
Right.
So I learned like timing. When I first started, it was like, okay, I stuck to a schedule of posting every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But the timing was sporadic. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I learned what I needed, and I was like, okay, I'm going to post around 9 a.m. Eastern time every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I came up with a schedule, like every Monday I'll do relationship posts. Mm-hmm. And then every Friday, which by far are the most popular ones.
Yeah.
Everyone loves the relationship posts.
Why do you think that? Just because the most people can relate to them?
I think they're the most relatable.
Yeah.
And I think anyone at any age can learn something about relationships. Mm-hmm. Like, because, you know, it's just relationships, it's not like one size fits all. Every relationship's different. Every person's different. And I think people are always looking for things to either improve the relationship, date ideas they can do, breakup tips, first date things to look for, body language, all kinds of things.
Have you ever read the book, The 5 Love Languages?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. You would love that book. Like,
really?
You would be all over it. Like, it's like, I think every single person should read that book as well. Like, it's crazy. It's basically kind of like condensed it as much as possible. Like, everyone has their own love language. Like, some people like gifts, some people like attention, some people like the physical aspect of things. And it's essentially like he goes through like all these people he's helped, because it's about like two people that really care about each other, but the thing is they're both just like missing the mark. So like, for example, like for me and Susie, we'll say my love language is I really like gifts. Like I really like, that is like how I really feel cared about and loved. And her love language is something like words of affirmation. That's one of them. And I'm giving her gifts and she's giving me words of affirmation, but it's not helping us like care about each other.
Right.
So the goal is to have her give me gifts and me give her words of affirmation. And that has fixed so many marriages. Like this guy, it's like incredible. Like I love it. Like I think every person before they split with their significant other should read that book, because it shows a lot.
It's called The 5 Love Languages?
I think that's the name of it. I actually have it over there. I'll show it to you when we're done. But I do have it.
I can't believe I've never heard of
Fantastic book.
Wow.
10 out of 10.
That sounds really good.
And I didn't read it for the longest time because I'm like, it's a girly book. Nope. Fantastic. 10 out of 10. Would really recommend it.
Well, you would think that. I think it's common. But, I mean, I have a lot of guys message me too.
Yeah.
And say that they love the posts.
Right.
Like the relationship posts and like thanking me for the advice, because, I mean, obviously my blog is like a lot of pink and white because pink's my favorite color. It's a blog that everyone can relate to, I think.
Right.
So, yeah, I definitely, the first year was a lot of learning, and I got the scheduling down. Mondays are relationships posts. Fridays I do confessionals, which I love because they're like diary-like entries. So I feel like it gives a chance to actually put the face to the writer.
Yeah, like a personal spin.
Exactly, and get everyone inside my head and just be vulnerable with my readers. And then Wednesdays are for any other topic that I want, whether it's lifestyle, recipe, soul, books, beauty, that type of thing.
Right.
That's more, I mean, and this isn't like I try to stick to this as much as possible. Sometimes it doesn't work out because of life, or like ideas might pop into my head, or I might not have an idea for a confessional for a Friday. So, but that's generally what I try to stick to. And then I realize now what I want is to really turn my vlog into an online magazine and have it be like a Cosmopolitan magazine or like Allure or Vogue type of thing that people go to. And I want to have like a Flawless World headquarters and have employees working under me. And I want to be like the CEO, founder, editor-in-chief, and have like, but also have people who can like spin ideas off of me.
Right.
And can go out and like do the research part of it, or come to me with ideas, or I could go to them with something and be like, do you mind looking into this more?
Right.
And I want to always be part of it and do the writing part of it as well. But I definitely, that's the goal, is to be running my own magazine. That's just based online.
But so you mentioned that your relationship is your favorite one to write about, right?
Yes, that and the confessionals,
what
for sure.
What other kind of niches do you have on there?
So I have beauty and skin. So that's, which is actually cool because I think the skin, well, I shouldn't say it because beauty doesn't discriminate and skincare doesn't discriminate.
Mm-hmm.
So I have stuff geared to people who are into that.
Right.
I also have books because I'm a major bookworm.
Mm-hmm.
And I know actually a lot of people who follow me on social media are also into books. And then I have this app, it's called the Goodreads app. And it's really cool because you can track all the books you've read. And I think I've read 71 or 2 books this year. My goal is to read 100.
That's a lot.
Yeah, the most I ever read
it's like
in
2 a
year,
week.
yeah, it is. The most I ever read in a year was 125. But
how's that even possible?
I don't know. I had my shoulder surgery. I'm a speed reader though.
Fair enough.
Like I can read actually really fast. Sometimes I'll check the pages and I'll be like, wait, did I actually read everything? And I'm like, okay, I did. But I don't know why. I've always been like that. I've always been a fast reader. I don't know why. I don't know what makes someone a speed reader. I would like to learn more about that because I find it interesting. But regardless, I have books on there, and I also have like soul, which coincides with like wellness and mental health type of thing. So I have, and then oh my God, I almost forgot this one, lifestyle, which is where it's like hacks to organizing or adulting hacks to help you live your best life or whatever. And then recipes where I'll do food recipes and cocktail recipes. So there's something on there that I think everyone can relate to or find useful information from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what I try to do because I really enjoy the diversity that I have with the blog.
Right.
It gives me a lot of creative freedom. Mm-hmm. I have this broad range of topics I can write about, which is so awesome. And when I mentioned earlier that I had written a novel when I was going through my shoulder surgery and everything. And for some reason, that brought me a lot of joy at the time. But for some reason, that didn't give me the same pleasure and fulfillment that working on my blog does, that Flawless World does. So, and I think because of the fact that I have just so much more creative freedom and I can do more, it's not like an overall, it's packaged differently. You have the photos, you have the writing, it's the research that you do, you have the marketing, it's a lot of different things, and it gives you a broad range of topics. And that's really why I love it. I just love that diversity.
You know, it would be pretty cool. I think Mark Cuban has like a similar book like this. If you like took all your blog posts, like didn't even like edit them or anything, just took them all and put them into a book.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty interesting, I feel like.
That could be cool.
Yeah.
I wonder how long it would be.
I don't know. Only you know the answer.
I would have to find out. I wonder.
But that would be pretty cool to like look at and like kind of like almost a scrapbook in a way.
Yeah.
But like once your following continues to grow, like that would be really good because it's like all organized for them. Like
that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I should totally do that.
Yeah, I would definitely look into it. But let's move back towards the relationship one. So we'll focus on that a little bit because I know that's one of your favorite ones. What would you say are deal breakers in a relationship? We'll start off with that.
Oh, this is an interesting one. I feel like probably the biggest deal breaker is kids.
Yeah.
I think kids are a major point of contention in all relationships. And I think it's something that both partners have to be on the same page about.
Right.
And I think you could get into a relationship and be like, one person might want them, the other person might not.
Right.
And from what I've seen, like I mean, I can't say indefinitely. This is just my opinion.
Right.
But I feel like the person who wants kids that they end up sacrificing, they would end up resenting the person, and they'd want them eventually later on in life.
Right.
I don't think that. I feel like that is one thing you definitely have to be on the same page about. I think marriage is also a deal breaker, but I think that one is a little easier to work around. I think kids is by far, if I had to name like the highest deal breaker, like my number one would definitely be kids.
Right.
I think marriage is up there too, but I think marriage is something that can be worked out more because marriage like takes a little bit of time. But that is also up there. Like some people do get married in like a day, but you know, if you're in a long-term relationships, you can
you can compromise and work that out. I feel like you're right on that.
Communicate about marriage and maybe come to an agreement or whatever. I think the thing about marriage and kids, I think it's hard because I don't think anyone would ever want to turn around and feel like they've wasted their time. And on the flip side, I don't think anyone else would want to turn around and feel like they wasted somebody else's time. So I think those are up there. Like I said, kids number one, then marriage. But I also think religion's a big deal breaker.
I think that can definitely be a divider, especially when it comes to the families. I can definitely see that as well.
Yeah. And it's funny because I feel like nowadays you meet less and less people who have some sort of religious background.
Yeah.
And even like the people I'm around who are having kids, like they're like not going to raise them in religion at all.
Yeah.
And I was raised Roman Catholic. My whole family's Roman Catholic, and I've made all the sacraments that I've needed to make so far in Catholicism. And I like the faith aspect of it. And if I were to ever have kids, I would want them raised in the same faith that I was. And I'll look at like people who were like my childhood best friend just got married, and they got married at a Catholic church. Obviously, their families are both Catholic, no problem. And in my relationship, Nick and I have no problems. I have no complaints. The one and only thing that we differ on is religion. He was raised Baptist, and he says he's agnostic. I would say he's more non-denominational Christian.
Gotcha.
I'm just going to throw that out there.
Gotcha.
That's what I think. And that is the one and only thing, because we've talked about getting married, and that's not like my main goal in life. Marriage has never been that important to me. But when we do get married eventually one day when we're like 60, I guess our goal is to like, you know, get our nice beach house and stuff first.
Yeah. But
when we do get there, I was saying it would be nice to have my marriage blessed in the Catholic Church. But for that to happen, he would need to take classes, and I don't think he would do that.
He likes to learn.
He does, but there's something about the Catholic faith that he's not into. So, because I was saying to one of my friends, it's like I've made all my other sacraments. I only have 2 left, and that's marriage and then anointing of the sick, which is when you're like dying.
Right.
So, which they can't always do because, God forbid, you know, things can happen. But
right, of course.
Regardless, but I think for people, and that's not even, I'm just saying, I'm throwing it out there because I see from experience, and this isn't even a problem in my relationship. We don't argue over this. It's just something that we've talked about.
Right.
And I think religion is definitely a bigger deal breaker than most people realize.
Right.
I think that like people have to be on the same page with that, marriage, and kids. So those are definitely the 3 biggest things. And then I also think that different financial goals and oh God, what was the word I'm looking for? I'm losing my
Aspirations.
mind. Aspirations. Thank you.
It's like I host this podcast.
Oh my God, I'm losing my mind. Is being a potato contagious? Am I catching it?
This is the Potato Finance Podcast.
I'm on the potato couch now too, just seeping into my pores. So I think, aspirations, financial goals, and aspirations, and just beyond, like just aspirations and your goals in general, I think are things you have to be on the same page with your partner about. And I say financial because everyone is different,
right?
Which is a beautiful thing. Everyone has different goals that they want in life.
Of course.
But if you have someone who wants to be a multimillionaire, and someone who just wants to like have a family, the white picket fence, that type of thing,
Right.
or whatever, that's going to be a very clashing lifestyle.
Right.
Because neither one of them are going to be into the same things.
Right.
They're not going to enjoy the same things.
Right.
And they might not understand each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like if their partner is just, you know, grinding or doing this or spending their time working on this and not taking little vacations.
Right.
That could be definitely a major point of contention.
Right.
So, and then I also think, this is interesting. I feel like having the same financial views, which you asked me about, and I wrote about for one of my blog posts.
Did I? That sounds like something I would ask.
Yeah, and it was, our different financial, the actual title was Different Financial Views. Is it a deal breaker? And I feel like you can come to a compromise, but I think it could be. If you had someone who just, just blew their money left and right, and someone who just...
Like, no concept of spending.
Exactly, and someone who, was just so extreme and nickel and dimed everything, that they probably have some fights.
Right, yeah.
So, that, I think, is another thing that can be compromised, but those are my, top 4 deal breakers that I feel like.
Now, talk to me about how different sides of the political spectrum. So let's say we'll go back with me and Susie again. Let's say I'm conservative and she's liberal. How can that affect our relationship?
That's interesting.
That's a blog post.
Yeah, you're right.
I usually am.
That is. You're usually right. I like that. Yeah, I thought of this too, and it's funny because Nick and I are the same politically. And our immediate families are all the same. Well, my whole family's the same. I feel like sometimes they were cloned. They're all so similar. Well, my parents are for sure, but my whole family is the same politically. Nick's, his dad has more siblings than my parents do. So there's more different political views in that area, but that's not something that people talk about. I don't know if that would be a major deal breaker. I think if it would depend on the person.
I agree.
If someone's heavily invested in the liberal side. Right. And I'm trying to think of how to word this.
They almost are stubborn. In a way.
Stubbornness,
because I feel like I feel like you and I could have an open conversation about politics right now. We're not going to because the camera's going. But I feel like if we can agree to disagree and walk away. But there's some people that I see. I won't even bring it up to them. I won't even bring it up because I'm I know it's just going to end in fighting and I'm going to have to be the bigger person and walk away.
Yes.
And the crazy thing to me is I don't think people understand how society works. It's you have one opinion. I have the other. That's what we call a conversation.
Yes.
And people don't follow through with that.
No, and I feel like it's getting worse and worse. And
I think so too.
It's people are just, I think it's getting worse unless it's just being, lights being shed on it. But it's you're wrong for not thinking the way that I do. And that's not true. You're entitled to your opinion. And in America, we have a democracy. So guess what? Everyone's entitled to vote how they want to vote.
I agree.
And you're allowed that right as a citizen.
Right.
And whatever. So I think, and my mom, she's so stubborn and stuck in her ways. And even though her and I agree most of the time politically, sometimes she's a little too extreme for me. But even though we agree most of the time politically, I won't talk politics about her. Right. Because she's so absorbed in whatever it is that she's consumed with. And it's only that way. And then it's this other side's evil. So I think if you had a relationship, if you and Susie's a liberal and you're a conservative, and both of you are totally stubborn and stuck in your ways and think the other one's wrong or dumb for thinking the way that they do, I don't think that relationship would work.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I feel I think we summed it up pretty well there. It just depends on how, open you are willing to be at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think being able to have a mature discussion with someone and just simply saying, I hear you, but I don't agree with you, is a very beautiful thing. Right. I wish more people could do that. But everyone, I think, is just so, self-absorbed and they're so stuck in their ways and closed-minded that they don't realize they're boxing themselves in. Right. And, again, they're not learning anything. And it's not fun. It's not fun to talk to someone like that in general. Politics aside. Yeah. It's not enjoyable at all.
It's very frustrating to have a conversation with someone, if that's what you want to call it, and they just don't listen. They just ignore you. Like,
Totally.
Like I know people, I could have the same conversation with them like literally 3 times and it'll go right over their head every single time. Most annoying thing in the world.
Exactly.
Or someone where it's just like you have the conversation with them and they're just like, I disagree, you're wrong. It's like, do you like anything?
I know.
Like, you know? Like,
I know. Exactly.
But let's move towards the confessional side, because I know you said that was another one of your favorite ones.
Yes.
How do you go about writing a confessional? Like, where do you get the idea from? Where does that stem from? How do you say, okay, I picked this topic and I want to write about this?
So a lot of times it's mainly my confessionals are about something that's going on in my life that I want to get out there just to put into the universe.
Right.
And also to give, like if something's bothering me or just weighing on my mind, last year my highest viewed post was my confessional on why Nick and I are waiting to get married. And that had come up, and he had done like countless videos talking about it, and like we'd mention it to people, and it was just like we'd always get the same question online, like, why hasn't he put a ring on it?
Yeah.
Like, and then like people would be like, why? Like, you have to think, like, if he hasn't put a ring on it yet, what does that mean about you? And I'd be like, and it would make me so mad because I'd be like, first of all, why are you putting it all on him?
Yeah.
And second of all, who do you think you are? And third of all, how do you even know that's what I want?
Yeah.
Like, for all they know, I could be like, he could be the one being like, I want to get married, and I could be like, no. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I put it out there because I was just so sick and tired of seeing it all the time. And like when I said how long we had been dating, I think at that point it was like over 6 years. It was going to be 7 years in June. And like people were like, when are you getting married? And I'd be like, can you just mind your own business? But I wanted to put it out there once and for all.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, this is what it is. And it's like we're on the same page. It would aggravate me because people would assume that we weren't on the same page.
Right.
And I really don't like get riled up about that stuff. But I think it would bother Nick because he'd be like, well, what is wrong with me? Like, I'm the man. Like, is this like, why? Like, what's wrong with me? I don't fit into society's standard. So I put that out there. So when something's just weighing on my mind, when I feel like something's genuine or anything that I'm going through in my life at that time is what I like to write my confessionals on. Like, just recently I did a confessional to my grandma. She had passed away last year on August 1st, and it was a major shock.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Tough.
Thank you. My whole family, we were so close to her, and she actually lived with my brothers and I growing up. She had an in-law apartment in my parents' basement. So she was just a huge part of our lives, and we were all so close with her. And at first, the grief was just so raw and profound. And grief is a very tricky thing because it's like this a lot of times. It's a lot of up and down, and highs and lows. And I was still dealing with it, and I was coming to terms with it. And once we finally had the mass for her this past May, it was so typical of her. She was so cool. She was so independent. She was 87. She was never sick a day in her life up until she passed. But she was never sick. She lived on her own. Even though, like I said, she was at my parents' house, it was like separate. So we'd see her and stuff, and we'd see her like basically every day, like coming and going. She was out the door at like 7 in the morning.
Wow.
She drove a Mercedes.
Wow.
She drank champagne every night.
Go Gma.
She lived on her own. She did all her shopping. She'd get cases of
for her.
Bell at Haxton's Liquor, and she'd carry them herself.
That's crazy.
Yeah, she was a boss.
Yeah.
Like, a major boss. She's like my absolute role model. But I wanted to keep that grief close to me and my family at first. And then once we had the mass, she never wanted anyone to fuss over her, so she didn't want a funeral. She was cremated, and my dad and aunt, because they were her kids, they split up the ashes, so everyone has them, which is really nice. And once she just wanted a small mass, immediate family only, and that was it. No funeral, no wake, nothing. So, which was typical. She's like, she didn't want anyone to fuss over her ever.
Right, of course.
She never complained. And once we had that, I felt like I was at peace with her passing. Even though, like, and that's not to say that I don't miss her, but I feel okay with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, it just came to me one day, like, when the anniversary of her death was coming up. So we were thinking of, like, having some champagne and toasting to her. So we picked up some champagne, and I was like, something about it just wasn't sitting right with me. And it happened to also, her 1 year anniversary of her death also happened to be on the same day that his grandmother's memorial celebration of her life was. So, which was fine, but there was a lot going on, and even though it ended early, there was something that wasn't sitting right with me about toasting to her. I think because in my head it was like, she never wanted us to fuss over her.
Right.
So it like felt, I don't know, something about it didn't feel genuine. So we didn't end up doing that. We got ice cream instead, which was awesome, because she did love ice cream. So but then I got this idea to actually write a letter to her, like a letter to her in heaven, and just talking about everything and the car, she left it, and now my little brother's driving it. He has his permit. He's taking it everywhere, and my aunt uses it, my dad, and then I was writing it, and I was like, why am I the only one that hasn't driven this Mercedes?
Right.
Everyone else is driving
Yeah,
it
right.
left and right. I have to go drive it, but just little memories and like thanking her, like, because like I'll have times where I'll like feel her. I believe in all of this stuff, and the night that she passed, she had given my mom a crucifix nightlight, and it was in the bathroom. And my mom said she went in the bathroom, and the nightlight was flickering. And they say sometimes when people have passed, the electricity is a big thing that they'll mess with, or they'll like respond with. And she thought it might have been her at first, and then she like didn't say anything. And the next night it was flickering again. And then she said, "Hi, Margie," and then it stopped.
Wow.
The flickering stopped. So I'll talk to her sometimes. I was talking about Italy the other day and where her family's from. And the lights above me started flickering. My aunt said the other day she was doing something upstairs in her room, and the lights were, I think she turned the lights on, but they wouldn't go on. And she said, "Mom, if that's you, turn the lights on." And the lights went on. So,
wow.
Yeah. And like there have been all these crazy things that have just happened. So I feel like she's here with me. But I like wanted to really remember those things and tell her, okay, we see you. We know that you're here. Thank you for still being here with us and watching over us. That has to be one of my favorite confessionals.
It sounds like it. I was going to ask you what your favorite one was, but I don't think I need to anymore.
Yeah, I think that's up there.
Yeah.
I love that one. I also, I really like the one where I started, when I talk about, it's called Why I Started Blogging. And it really gets into what led me to creating Flawless World. And it talks about how I was writing, everything we basically talked about earlier, the novel and whatnot. And I liked that because it really gave people for the first time like a glimpse into what was going on in my mind when I created it. I had mentioned it, but I'd never gone into that depth. So I love those. The marriage ones are super popular. What else is there? I'm trying to think. I also have another one called My Mental Health Journey and Healing that I really like too. That's probably one of my favorites. I've written quite a few now, and I feel like I keep the ones, like I'll have ones that I'll come out with more recently that I'm like, oh, that one's really good.
Well, that's good because you're getting better at writing them as time goes on. So that's a good thing.
Thank you. I think that is too. So I take it as a good sign. But those are probably my top ones, I'd have to say.
Now, walk me through the process of a typical blog post from like start to end. Like, how much research do you do? Is this just like all in your head? Because sometimes like I'll make these videos and it's like I won't do any research because it's just like all stuff I've read in the past. Like it's just in my head. How do you go about doing that? Like, where does your research process start and end? How much do you write? How many times do you edit it before? Walk me through the whole thing.
Okay, so a lot of my posts are, like I said, my confessionals are inspired by things I want to get off my chest or that are weighing on me or things that I'm going through. As for my other posts, relationships, for example, those will be inspired by either things that have gone on in my own life, in my relationships, that I've seen in other people's relationships. It might like come from a conversation Nick and I have had one night about relationships or pop culture. So it can really, the inspo can come from anywhere. And once I decide to do that, depending on what it is, I'll take my own knowledge, but I also will go out and research it to kind of like back up what I'm saying and to just get different like opinions on it. So as I do that, I have a little like pink notebook. I always outline everything. And that way I have a structure for when I go to write. So I'll like kind of like the one that what did I write the other day? Like I had one on body language, what to look for on a first date. Now I haven't been on a first date in over 8 years. So I was a little unfamiliar with it. So I wanted to like make sure like things I had heard of, and I would think of like stuff I would do on dates with Nick like to show, okay, I'm engaged, I'm interested in just how or just how you are in general with people. But I wanted to make sure that what I was thinking wasn't totally like out there. It made no sense.
Right.
So I went in and I researched that, and I just when I go in for my research, I'll kind of just I'll put like body language, and then like at the top, like that's the title, I'll underline it, and then I'll just kind of make like bullet points, and I'll either like explain those bullet points more if I need to. That way, when I go into writing, I'll know how to break it down, or if it like makes sense, like holds eye contact. Okay, I might not need, like I might understand why in my mind. Like holding eye contact means that they're interested, they're engaged, and they're present. But like I might not have to write all those things down, if that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm explaining it well. So I'll go in and kind of just bullet point everything. And from there, I go in and all of my blog posts have an introduction. So sometimes I might write out like little ideas for an introduction. Not always, because based on my research, I'll usually be able to write an introduction for the actual blog post because I'll have an idea of where it's going. So I'll go in and I'll write an intro. And then from there, I'll kind of like do a little separator. And then I have a heading. And then I'll usually, depending on the post, but mostly for like relationship posts and like lifestyle posts and the soul and all of that stuff, I'll go in and I'll do a list, and then I'll explain each bullet point.
Right.
So I'll do all of that. I'll write all of that out. It's like really going off the outline is the biggest thing.
Right.
And going into detail from there. And once that is done, I usually sit on it. I like to do it like a day or two ahead of time. No, I should say 2 to 3 days ahead of time. Sometimes 4 if I'm really on top of things or the ideas come to me that soon. But for the most part, I try to do it like 2 to 3 days ahead of time. Like today I worked on Friday's post.
Gotcha.
Because I had an idea for it. And I knew I needed to. So I'll usually do the writing, and then the following day I will go in and I'll edit it. I'll like proofread it, and then I'll add all the photos that I need to edit.
Gotcha.
So, and then from there, like if I'm still, and then sometimes I might proofread it again, depending how confident I am in the post.
Right.
The more confident I am in the post, the less likely I am to proofread it more than once. But I really go in and I try to pay attention to all the details. That's the biggest thing. Now,
do you use like Grammarly at all, or like kind of any apps to like edit the post for you, or is it just like all you?
It's just all me.
Wow, that's crazy. Have you ever considered using Grammarly or anything like that, or you're just like, I take pride in doing all this myself?
No, I've actually never thought about using it.
Really?
Yeah, I think just because ever since I can remember, I've always loved writing. Right. And everyone's always said I'm very talented at writing. So like if I have something that I'm struggling with, I've never used Grammarly, but I might like check it with like some grammar tool. Right. Just to make sure I'm like making sense. Cause like when you're sitting there in your own head after a while, you might be like, okay, does this actually make sense? Like, did I word this correctly? Yeah. That type of thing. So no, I do pride myself on the fact that I can write and I have good grammar skills and I have the writing skills to be able to formulate an entire blog post. But that might not be a bad idea. It can't hurt. I feel like I used it when I was in grad school. Fantastic. Like 10 out of 10. It definitely saved me so much time. Really? Like, and it's not just like, do you know anything about it? No. Oh, so it'll like gives you like word choice suggestions. So like say you like use like the word, I don't know, like aspirations like too many times. It'll give you like maybe use this word, you use that too many times, or it'll say okay, that's maybe use this. It's like was really helpful. I want to say it made me a better writer, but it really didn't. It just made my writing better. That's cool though. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I actually when I was in college, I took a creative writing course, and we had to do exercises where you would write down a word and have to write down tons of synonyms for it, and then formulate like a poem off of one of those synonyms. And like it was one that like wasn't popular, but it definitely breaks up the writing, and that's actually a really good idea. It's cool because sometimes it's not even like words you've never heard of. It's like basic words you just didn't think of, which is like what I really like about it. Yes, that's actually not a bad idea. Is it free? They have a free version, I think, and they have a paid version. The paid version's not that bad. It's like might be like $100 for a year. So it's like it's very like affordable. Like I would definitely recommend it. Like every person that
tells me like they're in school, I say definitely get it, because when you write those final papers, it makes a big difference.
I can't believe no one's ever told me this before.
Yeah.
I either have a lot of friends that didn't graduate college, like myself, or because I stopped to wrestle.
Or your boyfriend.
Or my boyfriend. I remember when I graduated high school, everyone was like, congratulations. And I was like, what did I do?
Yeah, right. It's like you almost like expect it, but.
Yeah, it's like, this is a big deal. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, my brother, why doesn't my brother Brendan use Grammarly? He asked me to do every writing thing for him.
Brendan, if you're watching this, that's a question for you.
You know what he told me one time? He was like, all the guys that I work with were like, or just people that I work with were like, hey, what's your sister's blog about? And he's like, I don't know. I've never seen it.
Oh, my God. Talk about a supporter.
I know. But he did take work off for my birthday.
Oh, there you go.
So he's a good brother. He's just, I don't know. He's out there.
All right, a couple more things before I let you go here. So you've had quite the journey from wrestling to your accident to writing this blog post. You've come definitely quite a long way. How much of a toll did all this take on your mental health?
So
sporadically, not necessarily now, but like, you know, the
Right.
accident, wrestling, like all that.
Right. So back when my accident first started, the thing, I think a lot of people are guilty of toxic positivity. And I think it happens because no one likes a Debbie Downer.
Right. Absolutely.
And I've never been the kind of person that wallows in any self-pity whatsoever.
Right, of course.
And if I did, my parents probably would have kicked me out of the house. My dad especially. Like, I remember one time I fell when I was like 8 and I like hurt myself and I was like crying. He's like, get up. Why are you crying? What's wrong with you? He's also like a drill sergeant too.
Fair enough.
So, but I just was raised like that. So everyone always told me, you know, it could be a lot worse. Don't get upset. So I had, and like that was with everything in life. Like no matter what happened, no, it could be a lot worse. Someone has it much worse. Like thank God it wasn't worse. So I adopted that mentality and I never wanted to be a victim in anything. And I would just kind of brush off any negative feelings that came my way. And it served me well up until that point.
Right.
But I say up until that point because I was only 21 turning 22 at that time.
Right.
So I had continued with that mentality and I was so focused on just getting better and rehabbing, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to focus on getting my neck better and getting my shoulder better. I'm going to get back to wrestling and I'm not going to cry or whatever. And it was a lot over time. It was just like a repeated assault because it was like, okay, my shoulder's getting better, but my neck's not getting better.
Right.
Okay, I'm still going to stay positive. I'm not going to get upset. And I also would be like, I'm going to ignore, I can't control anything, so I'm just going to ignore everything and just focus on what I can control.
Right.
And then I also kind of adopted this really toxic mentality where I felt like some people are really big believers in karma and that everything happens for a reason.
Right.
And I believe that to a certain extent. But I feel like a lot of things in life are random. Like, at first, I thought my accident was some karmic justice for something. And, I mean, I don't know what it could have been for. But I thought maybe I did something messed up and whatever. And then, I got karma for it.
Right.
And I focused so heavily on just being positive and ignoring what had happened to me. Because I was like, I didn't even acknowledge what had happened, basically. I just kind of was like, oh, whatever. And I'm just going to move on. And I thought I could right any wrong and that no harm would ever come to me if I only focused on being positive and being a good person.
Right.
So I was like going to church, but I was doing it because and then I'd be like, if I don't go to church every week, I'm going to get karma for this.
Right.
Like, if that makes any sense.
I know what you mean.
Like, which is crazy in hindsight, because I'm like, if I had that much power, I would be a multi-millionaire by now.
Right.
Like, but I don't. No one does. There's not a single human in the world that has that much power.
Right.
You can't control things that much.
I know what you mean. I kind of put a little bit of a different spin on it. I believe in like luck and like dumb luck. Dumb luck's like, all right, you got to win the lottery. Like, all right, man, like congratulations, like the ball fell in the right hole slot. But I don't know how much I believe in like true luck because I feel like you have to put yourself in a situation to be lucky. Like, for example, like if someone becomes like, you know, the next great Warren Buffett, let's say, like you had to put in like a lot of hard work to get to that point.
Oh,
like, you know,
yeah.
that's not something that just came overnight.
You stumbled upon.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, I woke up and found $80 billion in my mattress. Like, no, you had to put in like a ton of work to get to that point. That's kind of like the way I look at that, I guess, in kind of like an inverse sort of perspective.
Totally. Yeah. I don't like the word luck. I mean, some people, I guess, I have seen people who have had extraordinary luck in situations that they shouldn't have had luck.
Right.
Not anything like this. But eventually, my dad said one time, luck will run out.
Right.
So you can only have luck on your side for so
I agree.
long. I feel like I've never really had luck on my side.
Then you won't run out. That's for sure.
So maybe it will come. I'm just kidding. Nick always used to say that. But regardless, I had adopted this mentality, but it was really doing me a disservice. And over this long period of time, because now it's been 4 years since the accident, and I'm still going through all the injury stuff. I just had my radio frequency ablation done in my neck and in between C5 and C6 and C6 and C7 on both sides. But because of that, essentially ignoring everything that had happened, I was just like, really like just chipping away at pieces of myself.
Right.
Because I never allowed myself to feel upset. Mm-hmm. I never allowed myself to actually acknowledge, you know what? This does suck. Like, I know it could have been worse, and I'm grateful that it's not worse, but this is really not a fun situation to be in.
Right.
Like, there's nothing about this that no one would look at that situation and be like, wow, you're so lucky that happened to you. Like,
yeah.
No one would ever think
no one ever
like
say, I wish that happened to me. I wish I was in that situation.
Right.
Like, and if you do, you're like crazy.
Yeah.
Like in the head,
yeah.
like you're tapped. Like,
yeah, exactly. So I ignored, because the thing is, the accident did affect me. Mm-hmm. It did affect my life. It derailed my entire dream and passion permanently. I lost wrestling.
Right.
I never even allowed myself to grieve for wrestling. And that's another thing that I can get into in a minute, but I didn't even give acknowledgement to the fact that, yes, wait, something serious did happen to me.
Right.
And it did alter the course of my life. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Maybe there isn't anything I can do about it. No matter how many times I do this, I go to church, I do whatever, nothing's ever going to change the fact that this happened.
Right.
And then I realized, like, some things are just random. Like, just think of how many innocent people get hurt daily. Mm-hmm. Like, or just get hurt by drunk drivers. Like, I was one of them, or God forbid, get killed by a drunk driver. Right. Where's the karmic justice in that? Right. Like, you'd think it'd be the other way around, but it's usually not. So, I had spent so long doing that. And when I when my orthopedic finally listened to me and sent me for an MRI, and we found out that I had bulging discs in my neck, and I went to see the neurosurgeon. I was still holding on to that mentality, and I was still holding out hope that, okay, this is going to get better. And I was stressed beyond belief, and I had been internalizing all of it for so long. Mm-hmm. And this was in 2020. So I was hopeful. I was like, maybe they'll finally give me an answer. We'll figure out how to fix this. And the first appointment with the neurosurgeon, I was not happy with. And it kind of, again, threw off just other stuff in my life. But they basically told me, like, we might be able to give you these injections, but we don't think you're a candidate for surgery at this time. The doctor didn't even see me, which I was pissed about. Well, they sent in the physician's assistant. No disrespect to any physician's assistants, but the doctors and surgeons will usually do that so they can see more patients. I can see that being frustrating. I felt extremely brushed off, and I was alone. And, like, that's, like, an overwhelming thing when you're finding out news about an injury like that. Mm-hmm. Nick had to wait in the car because of COVID. Oof. Yeah, so they were like, you know what, we might be able to try these injections, and but we don't know if it's going to work, and then maybe we can put you on pain management if that happens. But we just see patients like this all the time. We see people who have just gotten dealt a bad hand of cards, and they just kind of have to learn how to live with it. And that was the first time since the accident that I actually cried. Wow. About everything. I got shoulder surgery to repair a torn posterior labrum, a torn superior labrum, a dislocation, that all the skin was stretched around me because it was so messed up. Right. I didn't even bat an eye at that. I was like, okay, this is whatever, because it'll fix me. I didn't cry when I found out I couldn't go back to wrestling immediately. Like, that was the first time that I cried. Because it was like, it felt like I was just like the entire world had come crashing down on me. And that like totally threw me for a loop. Because I didn't know how, like I'd never been upset like that, and I didn't know how to handle all these emotions.
Right.
And the prospect that, okay, you know what? Now I knew, even though I probably didn't voice this, I might have, I don't remember, but it was really like in the back of my mind, like bigger now, like probably not going to be able to go back to wrestling.
Right.
Even though I think I kind of knew that it was a small part of me, I think, still holding on to that dream. And also just like, it was just devastating. And it just threw me for a loop because I didn't know what to do. It was like I went through all these emotions. Like I had been just suppressing things for so long, and when they all finally came out, and then my grandmother passed a couple months later, and then it was just all these things at once, and I didn't know how to handle it. I was so overcome with my emotions some days. I'd be like, I didn't know what to do. It was very overwhelming. So I had to learn how to actually acknowledge things. I had to actually admit, okay, you know what? This did happen to me. This is sad. This did derail my life. No, it's not. It could be a lot worse, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this did happen. And I had to learn how to navigate my emotions instead of suppressing them.
Right.
And just I would just plow my way like bulldoze through everything, and I'd just keep moving forward. I'll just stay positive type of thing.
Right.
And I had to learn how to actually acknowledge things and deal with them in a healthy manner. I've never been the kind of person that, like, if I'm sad, like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to drink or whatever.
Right.
Like, I'm just not like that. But I didn't know, like, if I was, like, really upset, I'd be like, what do I do with myself?
Yeah.
Type of thing more than anything. Because I didn't know how to be upset.
Right.
Because I never let myself be upset. So I had to learn how to acknowledge the things that had happened to me, let myself feel them. Because not letting myself feel them made that news at the neurosurgeon's office that day 10 billion times worse than I think it would have had I been able to acknowledge, or had I let myself feel them. So it's been a very long journey, but I feel like I've grown a lot over the past year. That was when I really started working on things, on this specifically, working on myself. And the biggest thing is just letting myself feel things.
Yeah.
Staying positive and strong is healthy to do when you're not doing it in the way that's like, oh, it could be a lot worse, don't cry. Mm-hmm. That's not a healthy thing to do to anyone.
Right.
Someone told me that animals in the wild, I think they said rabbits might play dead when there's like a predator around, and they're like, I think scientists, I don't remember what it was. I might be butchering this. Mm-hmm. So, but the general gist was that like they found that after the attacker had left, the rabbits actually got up and shook themselves off because they acknowledged the trauma that they had just gone through. That's like what humans should do.
Right.
You need to just acknowledge things. So in a weird way, it's led me to this very happy place. I also had to let go of my wrestling dream and fully surrender and grieve for it.
Right.
I had to just be like, okay, this isn't going to happen. And I'm okay with that now. I am very happy with where I am in my life.
Right.
And I know I kind of am like, going back, I'm like, I know I said like, people will say there's a reason for everything. And I think there is a reason for things, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know how wrestling would have worked out. It's a crazy schedule. I'm so family oriented. I'm sure I would have had a hard time with that.
Right.
I really would have missed my family. I would have missed a lot of events.
Right.
Family events for friends. So who knows? Maybe this was good for me. Like we went to a wedding a couple weeks ago, and it was probably my favorite wedding I've ever been to. And I said to Nick, if I was wrestling, I probably wouldn't have been able to go to that wedding. Mm-hmm. And I have such a great memory in my heart from that wedding that I'm so grateful for.
Of course.
And I just look at it like that, but I let go of that wrestling dream. When I was in it, that was all I cared about. Mm-hmm. That was my passion. I was 1,000% committed. Nothing was going to stop me until something that was out of my control did stop me.
Right.
But once I let go of that, it allowed me to actually fully focus on Flawless World too.
Right.
So all in all, it's been a roller coaster, but I'm happy with where I am.
It sounds like you've taken the best route possible. I think considering everything that's been thrown at you.
Thank
So
you.
why don't you give everyone an update about how your neck is doing now? Because I'm sure after that, people might be a little curious.
So I had a radio frequency ablation done on June 28th, and it was a little rough at first. They warned me going into it that it could be a very difficult and lengthy recovery.
Mm-hmm.
They can't give they can't say this is what's going to happen because everyone's body's different.
Right.
So they went in and cauterized my nerves, the nerve endings between C5 and C6 and C6 and C7 on both sides of my neck. And basically what the purpose of that is to stop sending pain signals to your brain, like, okay, something's wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
So it decreases inflammation. The tightness is like relieved a little bit. Just the overall pain. It's a big pain relief. It's a form of pain management / pain relief. So I am feeling better. I am not 100%. I will probably, I'm like 99.999% sure I'll never be 100% again. And I've accepted that and I've come to terms with it. And I try to work my way around it, even though sometimes it's a little tricky. Like before, like I can't go grocery shopping by myself because I can't lift anything heavy. So I can lift that water bottle, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, or like a package of cookies.
Right, I gotcha.
But I can't do that. So I have to live my life a certain way. And I've tried to make peace with that as best I can. And I also, but this has given me improvement that I never thought I'd have.
Right.
So no, I'm not 100% better. I'm like 50% better, I'd say. Like I'm feeling a little pain right now. But it's much better. I had trouble typing before, which wasn't fun for Flawless World because it would
That's all it
distress.
is.
I know.
Yeah.
And then it was like frustrating because it's like I didn't have an escape from it. When you have a neck injury, anyone who's ever had a neck injury knows like there's no getting away from it because your neck, your neck is part of everything.
Right.
Everything you do inadvertently uses your neck. Us sitting here is us holding our necks up. And I don't feel like a bobblehead at the moment, which is an improvement. That was how I felt before. So it's much better. I had been used to living in pain for so long too, that I forget like these little improvements that have happened. And it's nice because like, I'll be able to read now. I do have to take breaks. Reading and typing were the biggest ones for me.
Right.
And I think reading is probably one of the best ways to escape from anything, is getting lost in a good book. But it's hard to get lost in a good book when you're in so much pain
Right.
that it's weighing on your mind. So I'm able to do that now. I can't sit there for hours and hold up a book and read, but I can do it for a little bit longer than I could before.
That's good. That's a start.
Yes, the typing, same thing. So it's a start. It's something. It's better than it was. So
Right.
for that, I am very grateful.
Well, Ari, that's truly an inspiring story, and I
Thank
think
you.
that's really awesome that you kept pursuing. I think that everyone can take a message away from that, where when you really seem down and out, like just keep pushing and keep looking up, and eventually positive vibes will come your way.
Yes.
But thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having
Thanks so much
me.
for being the first guest. Where can everyone find out more about you if they want to follow you or your blog or anything along those lines?
So flawlessworld.blog is where all of my blog posts are. My social media is linked there as well. I post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday around 9 a.m. Eastern. And like I said, Mondays are for relationship posts, and Wednesdays are either lifestyle, recipes, soul/wellness, beauty, or books. And Fridays are usually reserved for confessionals. You can also sign up for my newsletter, which is on my blog as well. So you'll be updated whenever I post anything new. I don't spam your inbox, I promise. It's just a weekly newsletter to keep you in the loop, or if there's ever any special giveaways that I'm doing, any deals, any partnerships that I have, you'll be the first to know. My Instagram is at Arianna, Arianna, with 3 underscores, then R. My Twitter handle is flawlessworld, 2 underscores. And my Facebook page is flawlessworld.blog.
All of Ariana's info will be linked in the description box down below. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and download if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. And we will see you guys in the next one.